Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk today. The topic is Sea of Rage. And I was writing this week about the environment online in particular. And I shared a story from my own life about back in the day. I've been online for a very long time. I'll start there. I, in 2009, opened my own yoga studio and simultaneously began streaming yoga classes from the studio in Santa Monica around the world. And we were one of the first 3 yoga and wellness websites that went online. And so because it was new and the timing and it hit when it hit, people were joining from all over the globe. And to this day, we have subscribers from all over the world joining us to practice yoga, meditation, be in conversation. And it's one of the great joys of my life. I have also always been writing. And at the same time that we launched the website, I also was blogging. This is back in the day when we used to blog. And I wrote not just for my own blog, but also for other online magazines. And it was a way of increasing the reach. And for me, I have been practicing and teaching yoga. I've been practicing for over 30 years and teaching for over 25 years. And seated meditation, I practice Vipassana, which just means insight meditation. I've been doing that every day since 2001. So I have noticed in my own life a tremendous amount of healing and steadiness and growth. And that is really what motivates me and inspires me to do everything that I do, to teach, to write. It's all an effort, an attempt on my part to share these tools and this beautiful philosophy that has really helped me in my own life, and also so many people that I have known and worked with over the last 30 years. That's where I'm always coming from. And being online is the way of the world these days, right? So when that first began, when I opened the studio and the website, I didn't really understand the power of the internet. I was not, and if you had told me when I was, a kid, like, oh, a lot of what you're going to end up doing is going to be related to the internet and to being online, I just never would have thought so, because I'm not a tech person. I've had to learn how to do more of those things and do a little bit of coding. Like, I've had to learn along the way in order to do the things that I do. But that is not, I've always been a writer and, somebody who is working by myself in a room or I'm teaching in a room with people, I just never imagined that so much of my daily life would be connecting with people this way. And the first time I streamed a yoga class live from the studio in Santa Monica, I still didn't totally understand what was going to happen. And then I started getting emails from people, who took the class from the south of France or took the class from Thailand, like from across the globe. And then I realized, oh, this is amazing. This is a way to really meet people that I possibly never would have met any other way, and to be in conversation and to learn and to grow and to understand. And then I became really excited about the power of the internet, and the power of being online. And for my entire career, creative working life, I've tried to use this tool mindfully to really understand doing this podcast, putting my thoughts out there into the ethers, or putting my writing out there, or putting my teaching out there, my yoga, that this is a really powerful medium to teach people how to meditate, or to give people tools of all kinds to calm their nerves, and just to be able to meet people and talk to people and ask questions that I might never, have been able to do otherwise. And so I have still such a deep appreciation for being able to do this and being able to use these tools. However, there is, a dark side to some of it. And when you put yourself out there and you are having conversations that are sometimes confrontational, or, you're going to get stuff back. And especially if you're talking about a wide audience, if you are kind of, as your reach grows and you have more and more people that are possibly, joining, you don't know what you're going to get. And we're never all going to agree on everything. And that's part of what makes life interesting. And certainly part of what keeps us, hopefully, working to have our minds open and our hearts open, and to understand that there are people that have grown up in completely different ways than we have. And that's exciting and interesting, right? To try to understand and to also realize that if I were born into that person's family in that part of the world, and I had been taught the same things that person was taught as a tiny child and growing up in that family of origin, I'd be them. I would be them. Like we're much more, we come into this world and we are just, innocent, open, curious, and we're like sponges. The first, 5-10 years of life, we're like little sponges. We're learning, we're absorbing, and what we have access to, that's our source, right? That's our source material. We're being taught values and rules and what our place is in the scheme of things. And all of us at a certain point, you grow up in whatever environment and culture you grow up in, and then you go out into the world and you start to figure out for yourself, were all the things I was taught, do they resonate with me? Do they feel true to me? Or do I need to unlearn some of those things? Or, or maybe were some of the things I was taught absolutely, do they go against everything I feel in my heart and mind, And this is a journey, hopefully, as we become ourselves, as we figure out who we are apart from who we were told we are. And that's can be a lifelong journey. And you don't have to put yourself in a box. I think we really like to pin things down as human beings and say, I'm this kind of person and I would never do that, and part of the yoga practice, when you get on your mat, and part of the reason that I called my site Yogis Anonymous, the idea is to try to let go of some of those really strong opinions we have, that strong attachment to our likes and our dislikes. And we call it pratyahara in yoga. It just means away from food, but it's not like the food that you eat. It's not like, oh, when you get on your mat, you're not going to be eating apples. It's the mind food, right? It's those strong likes and dislikes that we're constantly feeding ourselves. And it's an opportunity to let go of that and breathe and possibly see if maybe you don't have to hold on so tightly, and that maybe you are limiting your, your base knowledge by like being so attached to like this opinion or that opinion. And maybe it would be just an easier, gentler way of being in the world if I just like let go of some of that, grip a little bit less and open a little bit more and open my ears and like close my mouth a little bit. There's so many things in the yogic philosophy that when I started learning about it 30 years, I was like, wow, this is amazing. There's so much here that is really exciting to me and interesting and inspiring and just such a different way of approaching life that really appealed to me, because I had come out of, when I started practicing yoga, I was 20. I was very anxious. I was frequently depressed. I had blinding migraines, and I had been chasing happiness in all those ways that my culture and my family of origin and, the people that I grew up with, in all the ways that we were taught, you were supposed to do. You'd got to look right. And in my family of origin, that was big. Things had to look right on the outside. Didn't matter what was going on the inside, as long as like the Christmas card photo looked perfect, right? And then there were the other things like getting straight A's and going to a good college. And I did all those things. I did all those things, and I did them, I skipped my senior year of high school and I went to Barnard College at Columbia University, and I did all the things. I starved myself and I tried to take all those brass rings, and I still was incredibly anxious and frequently depressed, and realized, well, okay, this external stuff isn't doing it. And when I started to understand there was a philosophy underneath the yoga practice, and I'm not a zealot, it's like you just have to find what makes sense for you. But for me, it really excited me to think that there are just some really beautiful ideas here at the foundation that give you like a nice roadmap to think about how you're living your life and how you're going through the day and how you're thinking about your relationships. And so that's the spark that like drew me in. And here I am 30 years later, still excited by all of that. Along the way, because so much of what I've done has happened online, and that's both, like I said, the writing and the yoga and the meditation, all of it, and because Yogis Anonymous is one of the first 3, yoga websites out there, the fan page, this is back when Facebook was the place to be, right, grew and grew and grew. And today it has like 174,000 people on it, which is, not the biggest ever, but it's also not insignificant. It's a lot of people. And a lot of that happened because of the writing. This is back again when people were blogging. We don't call it blogging anymore. Now we're writing personal essays. But back in, 2009, 2010, and for that number of like those first few years, it was blogging. And I was writing about the things that I'm talking to you about right now, like the yogic philosophy and how to apply it to your daily life. Just your, whatever it is like you're going through. And at the time I was in business with my ex-husband. He wasn't my ex-husband then, 2 little kids. And we had gone through a divorce that was incredibly painful, as those things tend to be. And I started to blog about that, and how to apply yogic philosophy to incredible loss or grief, or how to open your mind to, the picture that you had of how things should be, to try to let go of that and embrace like how things are, and try to trust that maybe they're going to be even better than whatever picture you were attached to in your head, and to try to like not go through life gripping the steering wheel, like white knuckling your way through, because you're not in control of everything. And that's an exhausting way to do life. And I also was writing for other online publications, as I was writing about in my essay this week. And I wrote a post, and the title of my post was Why Being Positive Can Make You Sick. And it was about this emergence, this surge of kind of toxic positivity, which really hasn't died down yet all these years later. But at the time, like The Secret had come out, there's a lot of like talk about manifesting and your thoughts create your reality, and everything happens for a reason, and things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you, and all these things that you can like put on a meme. But if someone is going through just absolute heartache, grief, loss, and I'm talking about the kind of stuff that just like brings you to your knees as a human being, that kind of messaging can be so alienating and really increase the suffering for someone who's already barely holding on, and part of why I get so fired up about it still is because I watched my cousin, who I grew up with, who was more like a brother to me, lose his 6-year-old son to brain cancer. And it was just the most, devastating thing that had happened in our family. To this day, all these years later, I still, it just does me in. And so just watching what that does to a person, watching the way that hollows someone out is always with me. I will never forget the look on my cousin's face at the funeral of his son and that tiny coffin. And so when I think of someone in that state seeing messaging like everything happens for a reason, or this isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, or everything is unfolding perfectly, I want to throw myself in front of that train and say, stop, like don't, that's not helpful. It might comfort you and that's wonderful, but just keep that for yourself. Then hang that poster on your wall if that's helpful to you, but that's actually not compassionate messaging for someone who is barely hanging on. And I'm passionate about that, still. And you might believe, and there are parts of yogic philosophy that, I'd love to believe, but I don't know for sure. And that's my personality. I am not someone who's just going to swallow something because it sounds good or I like it or it's comforting. Like I can't, for me, I think there's enough, it's just my personality. If I don't know for sure that something is true, I'm not going to use it to try to comfort someone. And it's not going to be incredibly comforting to me either because I don't know. I like it. So for example, in the yogic philosophy, reincarnation is part of the deal. And so there's this idea of karmic inheritance, and that, whatever that you're here to have your soul evolve. That's why you have a human body and you're here on planet Earth. And whatever lessons you didn't get in the last lifetime, you're going to come back in the next lifetime and try again. And that is whatever, so that's sometimes if someone is going through something, that's the idea. Well, it's the karmic debt. You're born with the karmic debt from the last life. And, hey, I love the idea of reincarnation because I love the idea that we can keep coming back until we get it right, until we evolve and we're enlightened and we get to be part of just loving energy. That sounds terrific, but I don't know for sure that that's what's going on. It's a comforting idea. I'm not going to then tell someone that's how it works, like it's a fact, because none of us are going to know how it works until we exhale for the final time, then we'll know. And so until that moment, it's all theory, and I'm not going to share my theories like they're facts or share things that are comforting to me like this is how it is, because I don't know. So that, and I think that most people, when they're saying things, when they're sharing those ideas, like everything happens for a reason, it's because it's comforting to them and they're trying to extend some kind of comfort to someone else. But we don't all believe the same things. And what's comforting to you might not be comforting to someone else. And a better thing to do is either just say, I am so sorry for your loss. Not, I can't imagine what you're going through. That's not helpful either. It makes the person feel worse. I can't even imagine what you're like. That's not helpful. But I'm so incredibly sorry for your loss. Or if it's someone close in your life, you show up, and make sure that they've got groceries for the week. You come with food that's prepared. You just hold them, while they're screaming or whatever it is, you just show up and you are there. And that is sometimes the very best thing that you can do for someone. It isn't even asking them, what can I do for you? It's just trying to think of anything you can take off their plate. So prepared food is great. Groceries are great. Running errands for them is great. Working out like a meal train is great. Things like that. Like that's how you can help people when they're really facing the kind of loss that just is so gutting that it's hard to know how to, even if you're going to be able to continue. I wrote a post about toxic positivity, and I had that title, Why Being Positive Can Make You Sick. Because at the time, people were in the spiritual community, the wellness community, there was a lot of messaging about, putting everything in the gratitude column. And I was really worried for people who might feel the need to do that. I am a great believer. I've always been myself, I think, a relatively optimistic person. I don't want to give up on the human race. I can see the art in people and the creativity and the love and the empathy in there. And I've never wanted to give up on that. And even today, when it is really hard to hold on to hope some days, I still do not want to give up. So I wrote this post, and the editor was someone I'd been writing for them for a couple of years, and things usually went well. I would write something and it would do well and it would get shared a lot. And they loved that because they sold advertising space. And if people are clicking on things and engaging with things and sharing things, then advertisers want to spend their ad money on your site, right? On your online magazine. They want to give you their money so that in the banner of these articles that are being shared and commented upon and all of that, there's their, whatever it is, their yoga mat or their vitamin water or their supplement, is in the periphery of the article. So we had a good, warm working relationship. I was not paid for my writing, but they had a huge audience. And so I had a featured expert, author page on their site and with a link back to my own site. So that was at the time for me, I felt like, okay, that's payment enough. The editor changed the title, and it was a small but incredibly meaningful change. And so a few days later, when I got the alert that my post had gone live, I knew, just reading, I was like, oh no. And the title that they went with was Why Being Positive Makes You Sick. And my heart sank, and my stomach, this is not, because it's not that being positive makes you sick. It's that it can make you sick. It's that if you're forcing things, if you are not, it's the spiritual bypassing, right? It's the idea that something is happening, but, I want to stay positive. I need to stay on the light, this will all make sense one day. So I'm not going to let myself feel the heartbreak, the grief, the loss, the sadness, the rage. I'm going to force myself to, stay positive about it. That is what I was talking about. And losing changing the title that way really changed the meaning of the article. And sure enough, I signed on, and usually it took a while for comments to kind of load and start streaming in. And they were normally thoughtful comments and great opportunity to like engage and have conversation. People clearly had like read the title and were attacking. And it was, I mean, cursing, attacking, like, you know, up yours, like if I didn't have a positive outlook, I'd be dead. Like, you know, just a lot of like just attack. So at the time, you know, a single mom, I have 2 little kids. have a full teaching schedule, and it was the first time I had been attacked online, and I had a nervous system response, you know, fight or flight, like heart racing, hand shaking, the whole thing. And I sent an email to the editor and I said, hey, you know, I think somehow the title got changed, and I'm hoping you could just please update it because there's a little bit of an uproar already happening in the comments, and it's like it definitely changed the meaning in a significant way, even though it's a small change. She wrote back and said it wasn't an accident. I changed it intentionally. It's more provocative, and any engagement is good engagement. I'm thinking, well, it's good engagement for you. It's not good engagement for me. Like, I'm being attacked, right? So I took a screenshot of some of the comments. I mean, people were really cursing. Like, it was intense. It was not mild. And I sent it back to her and I said, you know, it's like, I don't even think people are reading, though, is the thing. I think they're just reading the title and attacking, because if they were actually reading what I had written, they wouldn't be saying these things to me. They'd understand where I was coming from. So I'm not sure this title is actually really helping the cause here. She did not write back. So this attack went on for 3 days, 4 days. I mean, hundreds of comments. And so I started answering them, you know, one at a time, carefully, did not sort of like cut and paste an answer. I answered each person, and I said, you know, I really wish you would go and actually read what I wrote, because I am 100% for a positive outlook. You know, I'm talking about toxic positivity. I said that over and over and over again, hundreds of times in different ways to a whole bunch of people. And I think like on the 3rd day, you know, and I was writing back to people. It was like 2:00 in the morning. Like, I have little kids, you know, so I'm waiting till my kids are asleep, and then I'm dealing with like all the comments from the day and just trying to sort of like save the conversation somehow. And I think on the 3rd day, and like the whatever, I don't even remember, you know, hundreds of comments in, I just finally was like done. And I just said, you know, that wasn't my title. Okay. I did not write the title. This is the title I wrote. It got changed. Like, you know, I can't, like, I don't know what to say anymore. Like, please read the essay. And I just responded in that way to one person, but enough people had seen it. They started replying underneath my reply. And people were saying, well, I don't understand. Don't you get to like write your own titles? And so it just became that I was like, no, you know, this is a very common thing that happens when you're writing for other publications. You know, you don't always have creative control over all aspects of what has happened. Sometimes you get edited in really, you know, through the whole thing. So, and that happens in interviews too. I learned that the hard way. I mean, there were times that I did interviews when the book came out, when Yoga's Healing Power came out in 2016. I did a bunch of interviews, and sometimes like your words get changed. Like, a lot of things happen, and I don't expect, you know, it's like if you haven't been on that end of things, there's no way you wouldn't know that you're going to be misquoted, or it's like you learn by having it happen to you, and then you figure out how to safeguard yourself the next time. You know, you say, yes, I want to do this, but I want it to be recorded, and I need to see the interview before it goes live, so you can object if something is not, you know, accurate. But you learn as you go. And so what ended up happening is I was never asked to write another piece for them again. And, you know, there wasn't even sort of like a meaningful conversation about it. It was just, I think because I defended myself and acknowledged that I hadn't written the title, that was sort of like an unspoken rule that you don't do that. You know, you just take it on the chin. And it was fine. I had other places to write, but it was the attack that, like, you know, it was my first experience with that. It was not my last experience with that. And I have always in my life, and I'm going to shift now into where we are today. For all these years, as I have been online and as I have been building this community, always tried to use my social media as a way to connect and a way to, again, like, try to move the needle toward compassion, clear communication, kind communication, nervous system regulation, like trying to increase, your empathy toward yourself so that you have more empathy for other people, patience, all that stuff. Those are kind of the ingredients that we need to have nuanced conversation with people who might come from, like, have a different point of view about things, or come from a different culture, or come from a different part of the world. Like, to be able to be open-minded, you gotta, like, be able to just breathe and tolerate it when someone is saying something that you don't agree with, long enough to understand where they're coming from. Now, where I draw the line, and where I've always drawn the line, is if someone's beliefs are infringing on someone else's rights, then we're in a different territory. If your beliefs are not harming anyone else, that's your business. That's your business, right? It's when your beliefs start to be harmful to other people that there's a problem. And we have become less and less tolerant. And I think that what has happened, certainly in the time that I've been active online, which is, again, since like 2009, it has become more and more polarized. And part of that is a reflection of what's happening in the world, but part of it is a reflection of the way algorithms work. And this is, you can watch documentaries about this, and, TED Talks about this. Like, you don't need to take my word for it, but the algorithm is always learning. It's what you're clicking on and what you're engaging with, and it's going to give you more of that. And it's the same thing as online magazines that like writers who increase engagement. It's advertising. If a lot of people are engaging and posting and sharing and they're online, well, then there's a lot of people that want to advertise on all these different platforms. And so clickbait and, rage, like increasing the rage quotient, like all that stuff pays dividends for these companies and keeps people enraged and engaged. And in the meantime, we're becoming more and more divided. And the level, I think people are they're feeling, just beside themselves with rage, with frustration, with powerlessness, with, just absolute mind-boggling. Like, how can anyone not see things the way that I'm seeing them when it's so clear, And part of it, just to understand, is that you are being fed a certain timeline. You're being fed certain articles and certain information that's going to echo what you think. And it's just, that's what's happening. Now, there's also no doubt that authoritarianism is on the rise all over the world, not just in our country, all over the world. There's a rise of that. And yeah, you got to push back on that. That's not it. All you have to do is just study world history if you are wondering whether that is the direction we want to be moving in, which I really don't think anyone who's listening to this is wondering. But I think there's such a high level of rage and frustration right now, and fear. And so people it's like social media right now is like one kind of living, breathing nervous system that is in a constant state of fight or flight. And so, you almost can't say anything. Oh, here, look at this, really cute picture of my dog. And people, why aren't you talking about cats? I can't, I'm exaggerating, but it's almost that bad that unless you're posting the most benign, stuff, it's like you're likely to be attacked. And obviously there are so many things happening in the world right now that are devastating, heartbreaking, not the way. And if you try to talk about any of that, you're definitely going to hear about it. For people who grew up with a lot of rage, or uncertainty, or, trauma, swimming in those waters, and a lot of people are connecting online. This is like how we do now, It's not to say, I have close friends of mine who are like, they've just deleted everything because they're like, for their mental health, they just, they don't have it on their phones. Certainly they might have it on their laptops that they can like check in when they want to. But I know a lot of people are just like, I've just taken all that stuff off my phone because my mental health was suffering. That is, if that's something that you can do where you can just opt in when you want to, I think that's beautiful. I also think you want to be really careful about how much of this stuff you're ingesting, that everything that you are watching, listening to, reading is food. It's food for your mind. And we're not built to process highly traumatic imaging and messaging all the time. We're literally physiologically not built for sustained stress. We are built for, the quick bursts of running from the saber-toothed tiger, overused example, but gets the point across. We're running, and we're diving into a cave. And then we can like relax and recover. We made it, we didn't get eaten. We're not made for days, weeks, months, years of sustained levels of just cortisol running through the body, stress hormone. And people they're just spent, like mentally, emotionally spent. And so they're screaming. And people scream when they don't feel heard. That's what is going on. And so you sign on to these platforms because you want to see, I don't know, your high school friend's new baby, or your, whatever it is, or you want to share, like, I wrote an essay this week, I want to share that. And there's just an onslaught of imagery, or, people screaming, like, and it is for people who did come out of a lot of rage or uncertainty or, trauma in their backgrounds. It's exhausting it's exhausting just to like sign on and kind of see this stuff. And I, as far as I am able to see at this point, social media is no longer a place for nuanced conversation. You express empathy or concern, or, and it's like, unless you're expressing it the correct way for the correct, people, you're going to get attacked. And there are certain things that I would hope would be clear to all of us, which is, violence is that's not it. That's not the way forward. It's that whole bombing for peace thing. Like, it's not, the rest of that analogy, right? Bombing for peace simile is like, well, you can look it up if you don't know, but I try to keep it clean on the podcast. It's not the way. And Thich Nhat Hanh, like that's a teacher for our times right now, being peace. If you don't have it, that is a book that I go to again and again. It's a beautiful teaching for right now. And part of what I was writing about in the essay this week is this othering that we're doing when you other people. And that is almost everything we're seeing on social media right now. You're either with us or you're against us. You know, you're either on my side of things, you believe what I believe, you're saying what I need you to say, or you're with them. And that whole us and them philosophy is what got us into like every mess that we're in. Every heartbreaking, devastating mess that we are in is because we've othered people. And when you other someone, you're dehumanizing them. You're saying you are not worthy to breathe clean air or have drinkable water or access to a good education or a safe place to live or food to eat or consideration of any kind, or you are not human to me. And so once I dehumanize you, I can do anything to you that I want and feel fine about it. And that is what we're doing. I mean, and that's very different than vehemently and wholeheartedly disagreeing with someone. You can vehemently disagree with someone without othering them. You can still recognize a person's humanity and, recognize this is a human being. And as hard as it is for me to like grasp where they're coming from or understand how someone could be so like angry or so intent upon taking rights away from other people or deciding their rights are more important than other people's rights, as much as it might boggle your mind and insult your heart that there are people who feel that way, the minute you decide they aren't human, you are now in trouble. Your humanity's in trouble. And that is what I am really concerned about right now, is if we get to this place where we decide anyone who doesn't agree with us is now outside the circle and they're not worthy anymore of my consideration or my empathy or my kindness or my concern on any level, we're in trouble. And I think that one of the things we can all be doing, like to me, I've always felt that if I have more power than someone who is being targeted, my job is to speak up. That is part of being in a society that is thriving and healthy, is that you want to take care of the weakest members. And that's like how we know how healthy a society is like looking at how they take care of their weakest members. And by weakest, I mean not that the people are weak, but they have the least amount of power in the system for any number of reasons. It's not a level playing field. And I really hope we all know that now, right? Like, I hope that's not even a thing that we have to litigate. Like, there are people who are just born into wildly different, less fortunate circumstances. And there are people born into, more fortunate, and that's just how it is, like everywhere. And so if you are someone who has a certain amount of power and you see people in your community who have less and whose rights are being threatened or violated, whose hearts are being insulted, they want to love who they want to love, and there's a fight about, like, yeah, I really do think your job is to stand up and say that's not okay, and standing up, how you do that, that's up to you. Like, for me, it's like, okay, I have a list of things that I go to if I feel like something is not just or not okay. I contact my representatives. I know who they are on the local level, the state level, and the, federal. Like, I know who my representatives are. And I know how to email them. I know how to call them. I know how to sign petitions. I'll make donations if I can. I will volunteer. We'll go to marches. I'll protest. Like, there are different things that you can do. And certainly voting is one of them. Where you're spending your money, all of these things to me are different ways of caring and taking action. I am not going to start policing how other people are, what activism they're undertaking, because right now, social media, you're not, by my way of thinking, changing minds or hearts. You're not, if I have not found that to be the case, for quite some time now. It's like, and there have been times where I've been extremely vocal, and it's fine. If somebody wants to attack me, go right ahead. I don't care, because it's more important for me to say this thing that needs to be said than it is for me to worry about if you're going to attack me. Do your thing, and like as you unfollow, like more power to you and peace be with you and all of that. But that's fine. But right now, when you're talking about a community of people who don't all agree about everything, and you're thinking about the big picture here and your own children, right? And all of our children and this world that we're in. I want to try in any ways that I can to be here for the entire community and to try to have conversations with people that are meaningful, sometimes one-on-one, because that is a more productive way to talk about compassion and empathy and productive, meaningful action than screaming into the abyss and just upping the rage quotient for everyone, which is what I see on social media. I just see more and more and more rage and vitriol and othering. And it's terrifying. And it's exhausting, and it's heartbreaking, and it saps you of hope. It starts to make you feel like the world is on fire. It feels like it's going to spin right off its axis. There are so many things every day that I'm looking at that I don't even know they're so awful. And then people are just screaming at each other that, like, how are we going to solve our problems together on this planet? You start to lose hope that we're going to be able to move forward in any meaningful way. And that is not a place where I want to get. I don't want to lose hope in humanity and say to myself, well, yeah, this experiment failed and the world's on fire and that's it. I'm going to put a blanket over my head. Because I have children on this planet, and a lot of you have children on this planet. Giving up is not, that's not it. We've got to keep trying, and you're not going to get there if you alienate half the people who are still with you, and listening. If but everyone has to do it their own way. That's my philosophy on this. Is like, I am always doing everything that feels right to me to get the message across that, ultimately we are one people on one planet. And, you might pray to it, you may have different ideas about how things are working and different beliefs. And you may speak a different language. You may pray to a different God. There's a whole bunch, but we're all human beings here with an equal right to exist. And we just have to figure out, we don't have to agree on everything. We definitely do not have to agree on everything, but we have to figure out how to exist here. So, again, definitely standing up for people who are being harmed in a society. And to me, the society's everyone. The society we're in is not just the society, in our country. It's the society like around the world. We're one human race. However, we want to think about it. Anything else is stuff that we've created, right? The reality is human beings are born here on the planet, and they're born wherever in the world they're born, to whatever families they're born into, with whatever ideology that family has, whatever language that family speaks, whatever ideas that family has. Like, still, we're born here, and all of us are part of the human race. And so agreement is not necessary, but some kind of ability to work together on some level to solve the massive problems that we have is necessary. And it's not going to, we're not going to get there. You're not saving lives by screaming at people on the internet. And we've gotten to a place right now where even your activism is being attacked if you're not doing it right. That is where we are now. There are people who are considering themselves to be like peace activists who are basically like, if you aren't performing your activism the way I think you should be, you're out, you're blocked, you're on the list. The minute your peace activists are making lists and block lists and, I'm sorry, but again, like study world history, McCarthyism and list making, and like that's never gone well for us, historically speaking. The minute you start putting people on lists, it's not a good sign, of moving in the right direction. And you really don't want to get to a point where even the people that are trying so hard to make a difference and try to move the needle toward peace and try to think about like, how are we going to keep going here? You don't want to start attacking those people too, because like we need those people, we need that is not, those are not the people that you want to be exhausting. There's better use of all of our time and energy than policing other people's activism. If you believe in something and you feel like something is not okay, do something productive, anything, any small thing. You can use my list of things or come up with your own, but show up in some way that, feels like it has some hope of resulting in the outcome that you're hoping for, which is, hopefully more rights for more people, more, upping the empathy quotient here and the just the love, it's like there's so much heat. Everything is so heated right now. And what we really need is that, maternal feminine energy. And I am not talking about gender right now. I'm talking about that energy, that cooling, calming, nurturing energy is what is needed. We do not need more fire. We don't need more fire. We need cooling, let's take things down. Let's try to just calm the waters here for a minute so that we have some hope of building a bridge. You cannot build a bridge over, a sea of fiery rage. There's no, you put a plank down and it's up in its embers in 2 seconds. You've got to be able to have conversation. Yes, anywhere children are dying, it has to end. It has to stop. We are the adults in the situation. So anywhere in the world, and there's not only one place, sadly, anywhere in the world we are seeing children being slaughtered, we're failing. We have to agree on that. Anywhere in the world children are being slaughtered, we are failing. The end. It doesn't matter where the children are. We as the adults are failing. The end. That should not be controversial on any level to anyone. We should all be able to agree on that. And I'm talking about in our own country as well, where you see children and we're not even keeping them safe at school. We are failing and we need to do a lot better. And the only way we're going to do better is by managing somehow or another to work together. And I know it's really hard. And the timelines and the algorithms aren't helping us. They really aren't. It is not helping us to other people. And, yes, you got to vote. And yes, you have to pay attention. And yes, take some action. Absolutely. If you're seeing something that doesn't feel okay to you, try to support organizations that you think are doing good work. This is the stuff that I'm always doing. But I personally don't add to the fire right now. Don't up the temperature. It's hot enough, and we're all getting burned every day. All of our nervous systems are shot. And this is not a normal way to exist. It's an onslaught of traumatic information all day long. That's not normal. And then in the middle of all that, you have like the Met Gala, or you have like, Cybertrucks. Like it's nuts, and it's not, your brain is like not built for this kind of insanity. And so just do your best. Like if, when you're engaging online, be really mindful about who you're following. You don't have to respond to every single, like just move it along. If something is insulting to your heart or your mind, unless it's, again, something where someone is trying to take someone's rights away, you just move along. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to engage with everything. Some of it is just rage baiting and doom scrolling, and that's not going to help you. If you think that if you find yourself like, I'm doom scrolling right now, I'm just feeding myself, I'm making myself sick with devastating information, it's time to sign off and go walk, get outside, look at nature, read something. That's another thing. That's kind of the last thing I'm going to say, is that, because I've had days where I've just taken in too much. I don't, because of what I do and the multiple, ways that I do it, this is the way I connect with my community that is around the world. I don't have another way. I'm going to be online, and I know that, but I am careful about it. I'm as careful as you can be in this day and age. Sometimes you sign on and it's just bam, right there in your feed. But generally I try to, watch, like, okay, wait, I can feel myself. I'm going to get into a state where I can't do anything but just sit here crying. Like, it's not going to help anyone. I got to like watch how much of this I'm taking in and pay more attention to what I'm putting out. That's really what I'm online to do, is to try to share something that might be helpful, or might make someone smile, or, might give someone hope, or, I can be, I'm from New York City. I can be a smartass, but I'm really trying to use these platforms as a way to up the kind of cooling, calming energy and call out the things that aren't okay from my way of thinking. Doesn't have to be your way of thinking, but certainly my way of thinking, which is we all have the right to love who we love. And, if you pray, to pray in any way that makes sense to you. And, like, these are things we all ought to have the right to vote and the right to protest. And, we should all be able to have free speech and move peacefully through this world. But that's not the world we're in. So I hope that this is meaningful, just to watch yourself. And I think in particular, just really observe if there's any place where you're othering people, and get yourself back on the line of, like, behind the line of vehement disagreement, wholehearted disagreement, and don't let yourself cross over that line into othering, because we're not going to be okay if we do that. We're not. And we're already seeing what it looks like, and we've seen again in history what it looks like when we other people, when we put them outside the circle of humanity. We cannot afford to be doing that with each other. That cannot become the way of the world, or it's not, So watch your tendencies. Since you can't change what anyone else is doing, start with yourself and just really look at that. I know how hard it is. I do. There are people who are saying things and voting for things and believing things that make me, I don't know what to do with myself, really and truly. So I'm not saying this to you lightly. There are people who have beliefs, even in my own family, that I'm like, I cannot believe this, and I will never give up on having conversation. Even though sometimes it feels fruitless and exhausting, but don't allow yourself to get to the place where you're othering people. And don't give up, find things to do that are meaningful and make sense to you. And then don't engage with the stuff that's just upping the rage quotient for everyone. That's really where I'm at. It's like, take action, but try to take action that has some hope of actually helping someone somewhere. Screaming at strangers on the internet who are also writing from the comfort of their, whatever, their houses, on their couch, on their iPhone. That's not saving lives, screaming at people. It's not saving lives. It's like, think about what you can do that might actually have some chance of that. Even if you're just one voice, right? If everyone is using their one voice, then we've got a sea of voices instead of a sea of rage. And that's what we need. I hope that this, conversation has been helpful to you, whether you've been attacked online or you haven't. It's like, I think we've all had a taste of it, but I've had, that story I share is just one. I mean, I've had all kinds of things happen at this point. I've had my address shared. I've had all kinds of things go down. So it's, the world it's rough out there, but you got to try to stay centered as best you can. And, definitely tend to your nervous system and watch your intake and also pay attention to your output. All right. I'm sending you lots of love and thank you for joining me for this conversation.